Welcome to Phase 1, Part 2 of my Developing a Match Grade Load video series. In Part 1, we created a couple batches of basic loads that we're going to use basically to fireform some cases and to give us some control group information. Now, before we run out to the range with that, we're going to record that information in my Reloaders Workshop program. You can check out my video on Reloaders Workshop for a little more information about how it works and what it does. And you'll see it from time to time throughout the Developing a Match Grade Load video series. We'll be coming back to it to evaluate our loads and so on as time goes on. So you might want to check out the Reloaders Workshop video that I have out there. Okay. Basically, I've removed all the loads except the ones that we're interested in here. Here we have a load for 308 Winchester using the Hornady 3031 150 grain Spire Point interlock bullet, IMR 4064 powder, Winchester long rifle primer, and the Hornady match cases. And then we see we have here our charges from our starting charge at 38.4 grains up to our maximum charge of 44.9. Now if I take a look at that in more detail, down here under powder charge data, you can see that all of these powder charge or load data has come from the Hornady 9th edition loading book. Here we have our starting charge at 38.4 down to our maximum charge of 44.9. The factory firearm was used in each of the Hornady tests with 22-inch barrel, 1 in 12 twist. And for our starting charge, we should get something around 2,300 feet per second velocity, up to 2,700 feet per second for our maximum charge. Now, they tested with a 22-inch barrel. I'm going to be testing with a 20-inch barrel. So I'm kind of expecting my velocities to be a little bit lower than the ones listed here. Okay. Don't have pressure information and I don't have group information. None of that is included in the book. Okay. Now, we've created a couple of batches of ammunition using that particular load. So I'm going to come over here to my batch editor. I'm going to add a new batch for rifle. I'm going to use that load that we just selected there, 308 Winchester, Hornady 3031 bullet, and so on. Okay. Now, here's all my powder charges that are in that load. Now, we made a load with 40 grains of IMR 4064. It's telling me here that with 40 grains, I should get about 2,400 feet per second, although there is a difference with the barrel length. This was batch number 2. It was loaded, actually this was loaded back on June 28th. We loaded 100 rounds. Case trim length was 2.005. If you watch my Part 1, Phase 1, Part 1 of the video series, you'll know that that's what the case trim length was that we used. And everything else is we're just going to leave at default. We didn't have head spacing or neck sizing information or the ogive OAL and whatnot. And the cases are brand new, so under cases times fired is 0. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add that batch. And we created a second batch using the same load. This time we used 41.7 grains, which should give us a muzzle velocity of 2,500 feet per second. This was done on the same day, on the 28th of June. Number of rounds loaded was 100. And the other data remains the same. So I'm going to go ahead and add that batch. So now I have my 2 batches of ammunition, 100 rounds each. The only difference being is the powder charge we used. Everything else, bullet, primer, and case was the same. Now, I have 100 round boxes of MTM boxes to hold my ammunition. So I'm going to go ahead and print a label for it. I'm using the 5444 Avery labels. And here, batch number 2, Frank firearm, caliber .308 Winchester. I loaded 100 rounds on 628. And here's the bullet powder primer we used. They were full-length sized, case length, and so on. Okay. Oops, I'm using the wrong paper here. There we go. I'm using the 5453. Okay, so same data up at the top, but this also, this particular paper has room for some blanks so that I can record my muzzle velocities for my test shots and my best group information. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and print one of those. I'm out of paper. Okay, I'll print that in a second. And I'm going to also want to print one for my other batch here, which uses 41.7 grains by MR 4064. And of course, I'm going to, since I'm printing the first batch on this label, I'm going to select that label for the second batch so that I don't waste a label here. And I'll print those here off camera since I got to load paper in my printer. Now, if you recall, we also have some Winchester factory ammunition. So I've entered that into the Reloader's Workshop. You can see, basically it's just general information about the factory ammo, the bullet weight. I don't have the the ballistic coefficient of the bullet. Wasn't on the box. But I do have just some basic test data. Muzzle velocity of 2450, which is what was printed on the box. So we'll be checking that out and see how accurate that is. Down here, a box of 20, I paid $17.97 for it. I think I bought it at Walmart. So at any rate, I can print label for that as well, because I also have 100 rounds of this in my MTM boxes. I'll print those offline as well. So we've got all of our ammunition labeled and boxed up and ready to go to the range. And it's range day. Here's my Remington 700 on my Caldwell lead sled. My MagnetoSpeed V2, V3 chronograph. Here's the indicator for the chronograph. And we have our bullet camera, target camera. Actually on our laptop, the camera outside the target is communicating with the laptop. Cody's the family marksman, so we have him do our groups for us. The Caldwell lead sled takes the human element out of it, so that we eliminate as much of the human error as we possibly can. Now our bullet camera was so hot and humid that day that our bullet camera actually fogged up on us, so we weren't able to use it for after about an hour.
Yeah, go ahead.
You'll see here there it's nice and clear, but once he takes the shot, we'll press the space bar and get an idea of where the shot landed.
Hit the space bar.
And that'll show us, there you see how
Where
it's
were
kind of fogged up on us. But we can still see where the bullet hit.
Why is it so dark?
We're doing some centering shots there, or making sure they're still zero. So, after 5 hours at the range, come back home, and now it's time to record our results. Now, one of the results we need to determine is our group sizes. I use a program called On-Target Precision Calculator. You can find them at ontargetshooting.com. You can get a evaluation copy of the software for free, and I think the full version to buy a license for it is like, I don't know, $10 or $12, something like that. But I use this to figure out my group sizes. And what I've done is I've taken a picture of the groups that we came up with. These look to be the best groups. There's no flyers, and you know, we were able to get a decent group together. Now I've got two groups for my Hornady match cases with 40 grains of IMR 4064. I've got two 5-round groups of the Hornady match cases with 41.7 grains. And I've got two groups with the Winchester Super X factory ammo. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Winchester ammo first. This is one of the first groups we shot with the Winchester ammo. What we're going to do is we're going to use the On-Target Precision Calculator here to figure out what our group sizes are. Now the first thing I'll do is I need to put a target, a distance reference in, and each one of these blocks is 1 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it that from here to here is 5 inches. And that'll set up a reference distance for the program. Next, I'm going to determine the aim point, which was right there. And then what I'll do is input the bullet holes. Now the bullet holes are 308 caliber. The distance we did this from is 100 yards. So by putting in the 308 caliber here, that creates the proper hole size or bullet size. If you can see it there, in the red, that's our bullet size. Now notice, of course, that the holes are not quite as big as the bullet. And that's typical because the paper stretches a little bit as the bullet goes through it, and then it kind of contracts. So the bullet holes won't be the same size as the bullet itself. So I'm going to put our first bullet hole here. The next bullet hole is there. 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 And there. So there's my 5 bullet holes. Now what that tells us over on the right here is that the max spread in inches is 2.944 inches. And the MOA, minute of angle, is 2.812. So I'm going to record that. 2.944 is the number I'm recording there. That's the number of inches. It gives you a lot of other information. The average to center, the group width, the group height, the horizontal offset, the vertical offset. You know, the program does a lot of other things, but really the only thing I use it for right now is the getting my group sizes, which is this upper left-hand value here, 2.944 inches. Then what I'll do is I'll go back to my Reloaders Workshop program, and for my Winchester Super X ammo, I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to add test data. Now, we did this on the 18th. Used my Remington 700 SPS Tactical. We took 5 shots. Our best group is 2.944. Oops. At 100 yards. And I'm going to enter my shot data, which basically is the muzzle velocities. And I have those recorded from my MagnetoSpeed V3 chronograph. 2517, 2540, 2525. Need to scroll it down a little bit here on the magnetospeed. 2556 and 2510. Now, as you can see here, we've got an average muzzle velocity of 29.6 feet per second. Our min and max here, the maximum deviation is 46 feet per second, which is okay. And a standard deviation of 16.55 feet per second, which is okay. And I'll add that test to the factory ammo here. Okay, so there we have our, on 718, we got our average muzzle velocity of 25.29. Okay. And I'll add another test. Oops, let's go back first. I come back to my on target program, and we're going to load up the next image, which is the second Winchester group. And you can see it's about a little less than 2.5 inches, it looks like, group size. And I'll go ahead and I'll do the same thing with this. I'll mark my center point, I'll mark my bullet holes, and it'll give me the maximum spread, or the group size in inches. And I'll go through and do that for all of the groups that I have, and enter that information into the Reloaders Workshop program. One thing I wanted to show you, though, while we're here, you see that, our first group was almost 3 inches with the factory ammo. Our second group was, it looks like 2.5 inches roughly. Let me show you one of the reloads. This is a group we shot with the Hornady match cases loaded with 40 grains of IMR 4064. That's a pretty good looking group there. And we were frankly surprised by this, because we use the powder measure to measure the powder in the cases, and we just happen to, if we look at the velocities, and I'll show you those here shortly, they're so close together. We had 3 of them that were, I believe it was 2364 feet per second, and the fact that we picked out 5 cartridges that had just the right amount of powder in it to come up with such a small difference in velocities and come up with a group like this, I think was kind of an anomaly. So we were really surprised by this particular one, that we got such a tight group here, even though we used the powder measure, and we really didn't use any special techniques. We just kind of threw the ammo together. Our other group with 40 grains of IMR is this one here. Now, there's only 4 shots we see here. We think that the 5th shot went through this same hole here. We're not real sure. We're pretty sure we didn't miss the target altogether. But for some reason, this one's only got 4 shots. So we're going to call that a 4-shot group, even though we think that we hit the same hole here. So that's with 40 grains of IMR 4060. And you'll notice that with the Winchester groups, they were fairly close to the point of aim. But those velocities were all in the 2500s, and this scope was zeroed using a load, 150 grain bullet at 2500 feet per second. So we kind of expected our Winchester stuff to go, fairly close to the aim point. But these are down around 2300, between 2300 and 2400 feet per second. You'll notice that they're all quite a bit lower. So the slower velocity of these rounds caused the bullet to drop a little bit. So it's about 2 inches lower than the 2 to 3 inches lower than our aim point. Now, if we look at the images from the 41.7 grains, we get a little bit more of a spread here. This is kind of more what I expected from our reloads. It's about a 2-inch spread there roughly. I'll find out exactly here shortly, and I'll show you the results. But that's one of our groups from the 41.7 grain loads, and our other 41.7 grain load is this one here. It's also a little bit low, but it's a little bit more spread out. So these are the kind of groups we expected to get using just the ammo that we threw together, and we didn't really put a lot of time and effort into it. This one here just surprised the hell out of us that we were able to get that tight a group. So it's going to be kind of a challenge to make sure that our match grade stuff, once we get we do the full Monty on our ammo, get a smaller group. But we can't cherry pick the results. We have to take the results we've got. So we're going to be shooting for our match grade load to be much better than this group size here. This is about 3/4 inch group, it looks like. So we're going to try to get even better than that. So once I get all the results entered into Reloaders Workshop, I'll come back and show you what we came up with. I've entered the test results from our day at the range to the 2 batches that we created, the batch with the 40 grains of IMR 4064, and also the batch using 41.7 grains of IMR 4064. Now if we take a look at the test data, here's that group that was looked so good with the 40 grains. It was actually 0.706 inches at 100 yards. And if you look at the muzzle velocities here, you can see why that group came out so well. 3 of the shots were at 2264 feet per second. We had one at 2252 and one at 2258. Now that gives us a maximum deviation of only 12 feet per second and standard deviation of 4.8 feet per second. And that's pretty darn good considering we used a powder measure to measure that powder. We didn't use a scale. And powder measures, especially with extruded powder, are notorious for being off by a few tenths of a grain or more. But these particular 5 cartridges that we selected for this particular group just happened to be very close to each other, and we got that very low standard deviation and maximum deviation. So that's going to be a good one to beat. So that's our best group that we got with the 40 grains of IMR 4064. Now the batch that we used, 41.7 grains of 4064, it's a little less accurate. Our best group was 1.427 inches at 100 yards. And the muzzle velocities vary a little bit more. We got 2387, 2360, 2401, etc. And you can see the maximum deviation was 41 feet per second with a standard deviation of 16.33 feet per second, which, to be honest, is really kind of what I expect from cartridges that were, got their powder charge from a powder measure as opposed to a powder scale. So these were, a little bit further off than that other group that we had, and that's to be expected since we used a powder measure. So we've got our test data in there. Now I can come back to our load data, and I can do an evaluation of the loads. Now, obviously, I don't need a computer program to tell me that 0.706 is less than 1.427 as far as the group size. But what the program allows me to do, number one, is to record the data so that I don't have it, in a notebook written down somewhere on a piece of paper somewhere that can get lost. I got all my data in my database here. Also, this particular database that I'm using is one that I created specifically for this video series. It doesn't have the hundreds and hundreds of other loads and batches and whatnot that I have in my own personal database. I wanted to be able to show you the test data without all the other stuff, getting in the way. So it makes it a little less cluttered for the video here. So anyway, we had batch number 2 with the 40 grains of IMR 4064. Best group was 0.706 with an MOA of 0.739 at a range of 100 yards. The 41.7 grains of IMR 4064, we had 1.427 as our best group, and with an MOA of 1.494 at 100 yards. Now, some people may be asking, gee, why is the best group and the MOA different? Well, most people just use 1 inch for the MOA. The MOA is actually 1.047 inches. So essentially, we took the range, divided it by 100, in this case it's 1, multiplied that by 1.047, took that value and then multiplied it by our best group size, and that gives us a true MOA. 1.047 is so close to 1 inch that most people just use 1 inch, but if you're interested in the actual MOA, the program provides that for you. Okay. Now I could also, hit this radio button here and add the factory data to it, from the Hornady 9th edition book, all the different charges that are in there. Of course, we don't have any groups or we haven't shut any groups with any of those charges, so we don't have any test data. This is just the data that came out of the book. One thing we can look at, however, if we look at the 40 grain charges here, in the book, 40 grains should give us 2,400 feet per second. In our actual batch test, batch number 2 here, we ended up with a muzzle velocity of 2260. And you can see the difference between the different types of firearms used for testing. In the book, they used a 22-inch barrel and got 2,400 feet per second muzzle velocity. We use a 20-inch barrel, so our muzzle velocity, as expected, is a little bit less at 2260. So it's about 140 feet per second less with our 20-inch barrel. Now, if we look at the 41.7 grains of IMR 4064, in the book, that's, they got 2,500 feet per second with the 22-inch barrel. We got an average muzzle velocity of 2379, so it's about 121 feet per second less with our 20-inch barrel. So, again, that's to be expected. Shorter barrel has less time to build up the pressure, less time to build up velocity. So our velocities were a little bit less than what the book indicates. Okay, so that's really the only reason to include the factory test data. We don't have group information, but we can take a look at the muzzle velocities and get an idea, what kind of differences our firearm is getting, basically, as compared to the factory stuff. Okay, so I can take that off. I can also, select specific bullets. For instance, I only want to see loads with the Hornady match cases here, so it'll pare that down a little bit, and it'll just show me the data with using the Hornady match cases. Or I can look at the Norma cases and so on. I don't have any data yet on the Norma cases. I haven't loaded those up and created a basic load to do some fireforming with the Norma cases. I have a batch of 200 brand new Norma cases. So, anyway, that's the evaluation portion of Reloader's workshop, and I can continue adding batch tests, and you know, it'll keep on adding. I've got hundreds and hundreds of them in my my own personal database. But I can get, you know, I can sort by the MOA, you know, and or the best group, you know, and see which one has the lowest group size. I can, you know, click that again. It'll give me a descending sort. If I have the factory data in there, you know, I can sort it by the source, so I get my batch tests, you know, up near the top here. I can sort it by the caliber. Of course, we're all the same caliber. Powder, primers, and all that's the same. I can sort by cases, you know, by clicking on the column headers, or sort by charges. So, you know, the evaluation form gives me a lot of options as far as evaluating my loads. And right now we just have the two. And as we go on with the video series on developing a match grade load, we're going to be adding to this this list here, and we're going to be seeing, you know, what kind of groups we get with various combinations of components: bullet, powder, primer, and cases. Okay. And you can see here that I've added some more loads. It's the same bullet, powder, and primer, but each of these has a different case. Here's a Norma case, and here's the Winchester case. Of course, we're using the same charge data from the book, regardless of which case we use. Now, a couple of my subscribers out there, you know who you are, swear by Lapua cases. So I went out and bought some Lapua cases, and I'm going to add a new load using Lapua cases. There we go. So I'm going to use the same bullet, the Hornady, oops, got to select the right caliber here, 308 Winchester. Going to use the Hornady 3031 bullet. We're going to use the IMR 4064 powder again. We're going to use this time the Lapua case, the 308 Winchester, and the same primer, the Winchester large rifle. And then I would add the powder charges. Now, I don't want to have to, all I did was change the case. The bullet and the powder remain the same, so I don't want to have to sit down and copy all that stuff from the book again. So the program gives me the ability to copy a charge list. And I'm going to copy the charge list from the same bullet, same primer, same case, or the Hornady match case. And what that'll do is copy all the charges then from that load. And I can add that, and you can see now that we have the that same load, same bullet, powder, and primer, but this time with the Lapua case, and we get the same charge data, and we can view it here and see that, you know, all the same charges are in there. There's our 40 grain, there's our 41.7 grain. So it makes it a little easier to add a load when all I'm doing is changing one or two components. The bullet and the bullet weight and the powder are the primary things that you're looking at in the books. If you change the primer out, or you change the case, not that big a difference. You would typically use the same powder charges. You know, you may have cases that are a little thicker and things like that, that you might want to pare your powder charges down a little bit, but as long as you're not up here at the max load or the max charge, you know, you're typically okay. Okay. So the next step, of course, then, is I'm going to take these Hornady match cases that we fire formed and the Winchester cases that we fire formed, and go on to the next phase of our developing a match grade load. And then the Lapua and Norma cases I'm going to load up in the same fashion that I did in this phase, where we just use the AP press and the powder measure instead of a powder scale. And I'm going to fire form some Lapua and Norma cases. and then we'll add that to the data, and we'll be able to compare group sizes and whatnot in the evaluation form, and see if Lapua cases or Norma cases give us any significantly different results, either in muzzle velocity or group sizes, that sort of thing. As we prepare to go to phase 2 here, we've got our fire form cases here. I've got some Hornady match cases. I've also got the Winchester cases that came from the factory ammo that we fired. And these have been formed to the chamber of my Remington 700. Now, one thing I will say about fire forming cases, now, firing a case once doesn't necessarily completely form it to the chamber of my gun. So I'm going to be remeasuring this as I go on every time I fire it, until it kind of settles down and I know that it's been fully expanded. Sometimes if you have a light load, or the case is a little thicker, or the makeup of the brass that the case is made of is a little different. Sometimes just firing it once won't do the job. It won't expand all the way. Sometimes you need to fire it 2, 3, maybe 4 times before you really get it to settle down and it's fully expanded to the chamber in your rifle. So this has only been fired once, so it's may not be fully expanded yet, but it's better than nothing. So these cases, the Hornady match cases and the Winchester cases that we fired, are going to move on to phase 2, and we're going to upgrade the bullets. We're going to use some Hornady AMAX 178 grain bullets, and we're going to use some Hornady match 168 grain bullets in this in phase 2, and we'll be using IMR 4895 powder and some Hodgdon Varget powder for phase 2, and of course we'll be using the same primers. Now over here on the left, I've got my Norma cases, and I've got a couple boxes of the Lapua cases. We're going to be running these through exactly the same procedures that we did in phase 1 part 1 that we did with these cases. We're going to be using the IMR 4064 powder. We're going to be using the same 150 grain Spire Point bullets that we used in phase 1, and we're going to fire form our Norma and Lapua cases the same way. And by using the same components with just different cases, we'll get a good evaluation, or a good comparison between what these cases do for us as opposed to the Hornady match and the Winchester cases. So at the same time that these guys move on to phase 2, I've got these guys going into phase 1, and you can watch the phase 1 part 1 of the Developing Match Grade Load series to see what we're going to be doing with these guys. I just replace the Hornady match cases with Norma and Lapua cases, and it'll be the same thing otherwise. And then stay tuned for phase 2 part 1 of the Developing a Match Grade Load series, where we'll be using these components to move forward. That's all for this video. I hope you liked it. If so, please click the like button. Maybe even subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and happy reloading.